The Republicans seem to believe that the only response to these protests is to have overwhelming force to dominate the streets, and we're seeing that happening right now. As of Monday morning, let alone today, 17,000 National Guard troops have been deployed to 23 states and Washington, D.C. No state has requested federal assistance, however, subverting the normal process for domestic military intervention. I expect that to be a trend that continues. And we know that earlier this week, there was a call leaked to the Washington Post where the Secretary of Defense told governors that the National Guard stands ready to assist and urge states to dominate the battle space of any protests that had turned violent. 3 unnamed Pentagon senior officials told the Daily Beast that despite this call, they had not expected the president to act on it. They said Esper spoke mainly as a show of support to the president and had not expected a further deployment of troops, which, Michael, brings to mind for me when the military brass gave Trump a bunch of different options for Iran, and they only put out the most extreme one to make the others seem more appealing, and then they were surprised by his choice. But anyway, Esper apparently didn't really mean it about dominating the battle space. And that looks like what they're doing, though.
Yeah, it's certainly what they've tried to do. And even as he's walked it back a little bit, Esper, the intent was clear. And I don't think anybody thinks that they were mincing words about that. And they got the words out that they wanted to use. Battle space. Protests turn violent. It's not the protests themselves that were turning violent. And the looting that came out of them was not related to the protests, nor was it, at first anyway, violent looting. It was destructive, and it was vandalizing, and it was terrible. But it had nothing to do with a battle space that they tried to frame. And, would this have happened if it were not an election year? I don't know, but I do think that there is some difference to the fact that that the president's up for election in less than 5 months now. So I think that you can't discount that.
And, that theory could potentially explain this other turn. Trump has apparently asked for detailed information on the kinds of military vehicles, including tanks, that could be deployed, according to Pentagon officials, speaking of the Daily Beast. But a senior administration official said this didn't necessarily mean Trump wanted to send tanks. The Beast reported, quote, "I think that's just one of the military words he knows," according to the official.
Oh, my God.
Which is reassuring.
Right.
He doesn't mean tanks. It's just he sees a cat and he points and says, "Puppy." That's just the word he knows.
Right.
Imagine being that. Imagine being a military official.
And also that there's nothing, even if forgetting the words, like the notion that he cares about it, he didn't mean that. Like he's just sitting around doing inventory. That's one of the things that he's taking control of.
He does inspections.
Yeah, right. I mean, come on.
Oh my God. And the thing is, like, okay, I'm sure you're comfortable, senior administration official, that he doesn't actually mean it. He's just using one of the 7 words he's mastered in the English language. Except that, how many times has Trump indicated that he wants tanks and rocket launchers at military parades? And we know that decades ago, he was talking glowingly about the Chinese crushing of the Tiananmen Square protests. Like that symbolic, iconic moment that we all understand what that one individual represents. All of us, except for Trump, who saw that as, hey, that guy has to get out of the way. That's an awesome parade. Move out of there, man.
And by the way, the tank did try and get out of the way of the guy, too. I mean, so, which is different than what we're seeing on the streets of the United States. So that to the Chinese credit there, if you're going to give any, I mean, the whole idea was this evasion, which made it so compelling, was this lonely voice there. Yeah. But it wasn't like they just ran him. I mean, well, they didn't run him over with the tank.
Yeah. Yeah. I was predicting days ago that he's going to do it, at least in D.C. He's been horny for tanks in the streets this entire time. He's going to get it. They buzz the people with the helicopter. And look, at a certain point, this is just wordplay. I mean, you've seen some of the vehicles, I'm sure, that they're deploying. They're not technically main battle tanks, but it's basically the same thing. These are armored vehicles deployed against U.S. citizens. And so, but I would not be surprised if he was putting pressure on them to bring out even heavier hardware.
No, there's this, the old, a president at war is a president that's hard to defeat at the ballot box. And it just so happens this president's war is the one that he seems to fancy is here on his own soil. And so having this military presence in his mind, I am certain, he did not tell this to me, nor has anyone, but it's very easy to infer that this is part of the strategy here, is to be a president at war and to be right as far as the people that are going to support him would view it. So I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, look, last thing on tanks for me, I obviously don't want any of this, because the more force that they put in the streets, the more violence ends up getting unleashed on peaceful protesters. But I also know that Trump has apparently for months now just been moonlighting as the star of Democratic ads. We're going to have an ad later on. He's just doing whatever it takes to make devastating campaign ads against him. So does he not get that if he puts tanks in the street, there are going to be tank man moments? That people aren't going to take the opportunity to stand in front of these tanks and force the tanks to make a decision. I mean, it's going to be like, it's going to happen.
Right. If he doesn't know the names of any other military equipment, tanks are the only thing he can put in the street, though, John.
That's true. That's true.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.